This is a CCSN special report. Hello, everybody. Welcome to this CCSN special report. I'm Benjamin Parris, joined today by Cherry Creek High School Principal Ryan Silva. Principal Silva, how are you doing?
I'm doing well. Thank you. How are you, Ben?
Doing well. I know something that you like to do on your staff meetings a lot is a popsicle, poopsicle, and dreamsicle. So if I can start you off with that, and then we'll get right into our report.
Oh, great idea. I like it. So I guess, are you talking about during this whole quarantine or like for the day or?
Yeah, let's go. Let's go
define?
for the last 6 or 7 weeks.
Okay. So I'd say that the popsicle has been that we've had a lot of family time and a lot of unscheduled time for sure. And so that's been nice because normally we have to run around from practice to practice and pick up to pick up. And so that's been definitely an advantage.
Very good. So,
and then going on to the others, the poopsicle would probably be just not being in school and having the normal things that we would be doing this time of year. The fourth quarter is a really fun time of year, and a lot happens at school, and there are a lot of celebrations, and not having those, I think that's been a real difficult piece. And so then the dreamsicle would be that we're able to start school like normal and get back to doing what we normally do at Cherry Creek.
Absolutely. So we're going to get right into our interview. I want to start back on March 12th, 2020. And for those who are big fans at the Cherry Creek Sports Network and from Cherry Creek, that's the night that the girls basketball team played in the semifinal. So their game started at like 8:30. So say about an hour and a half before that, the Cherry Creek School District announced that, one, we want to have school the next Friday, and then it would have been spring break. And then the week after that, we didn't have school. So first of all, I think a big misconception is that a lot of this comes from the district as opposed to you as the principal. So what type of communication do you have with the district when a instruction like that comes in for cancellation?
So the district, they're great and communicating with all the different schools and all the different principals. And so that happened in this situation too. But that type of decision isn't a decision that is made at the school level. That would be a decision that is made at the district level. And they obviously have more information and access to more information than what we have at the building level. And so their leadership is pretty valuable to us.
So then over spring break, when, you know, the closure of schools got extended, and I mean, at a certain point it gets the rest of the year is in-person learning. How much comes from, you know, the state, the health departments, and then CHSA plays a role into that? How much are you doing, and then how much, I guess, direction are you getting from, you know, like higher levels?
Sure. So the superintendent and his leadership group, they are in communication with the governor or the governor's office. They're also communicating with Tri-County Health Department, and they have a medical advisory group too that also is just a group of people who they meet with regularly anyway, not just during a time of a pandemic, but they do that on a regular basis. And so they're getting input from all of those groups. And then ultimately it would be the superintendent along with the school board that would make decisions and approve decisions that are made. So when they're making the decisions to extend the spring break by another week, that's a pretty informed decision that they're making based on all the access to these different experts that they have.
Very good. So then it gets more down to school level stuff. And the thing we're going to start with is the topic of really seniors and end of year activities. So stuff like prom, graduation, the award shows, we know, of course, those happen remotely the last 2 nights. But then what goes in, and I know Dr. Keogh has a lot to do with that, along with you and all of your leadership, but then what goes in to canceling prom with venues and stuff like that? And then people really want to know, why was there no possible reschedule of prom like there was for graduation?
Sure. So Dr. Siegfried made the decision to cancel all the proms, and I feel like that happened shortly after spring break was scheduled to end. And he really made that decision because he felt like the idea of being able to gather that many people together wasn't really going to be possible. And he also felt like he needed to make that decision because the schools were at different places in those processes. So, in other words, ours was scheduled for the 25th, and whereas Grandview, I think they were first. And so their deadlines were coming up pretty quickly. So they had a sense of urgency at Grandview that was different than what we had because we had more time. And then also what maybe some of the other sister schools in our district had as well. And so, so he just made that decision for the whole district. But actually, for us, even though ours was further down the road, our contract was canceled during spring break because the venue that we were using was in Denver, and they were told by city officials that they would not be able to host large events like ours. And so even before Dr. Siegfried canceled all of the proms, our prom was canceled by our venue when we didn't have a facility. We didn't feel like we needed to cancel yet, even though they had canceled on us, simply because we thought maybe there was a possibility we could even do it at the school. But then when all proms were canceled, then that really made it easy for all of the schools to start working on recovering deposits and those types of things. And it also, prom is huge. Our parents, they put on after prom, and so contracts were becoming due where they had to start paying more money, and so they needed direction as well. And so I think and now we know that the decisions were good because groups were canceling on us, and we didn't want to start losing money. And then in terms of rescheduling, it didn't seem like there was going to be an opportunity to do that in a safe way in the summer. And I think that was the reason why. And there were other gatherings that were going to be more of a priority, specifically graduation. And so I think that that's why the focus was going to want to be on those areas.
So yeah, moving right on to graduation, a few things that Dr. Siegfried stressed was one, location, because he wants it outside, which isn't an issue for Cherry Creek, but other schools do it at places like DU. And then being safe to have those large gatherings. And I know in the latest email, it said limited attendance. And just as a reference, when Cchs said limited attendance, they gave each person 4 tickets for a basketball game. So is there any idea of what limited attendance or a timeline for graduation might look like?
So I do think the month that seems most ideal would be July, but again, that's not set yet. We have regular graduation meetings. Those happen multiple times each week. And so based on the information that we have right now, it does seem like July might be the best time. We're also going to work with groups like Tri-County Health and also other leadership groups like the governor's office, just to make sure that they are aware that we're doing these things. But with Tri-County Health, we would want them to be able to look at whatever plan it is that we arrive at for graduation and basically give their stamp of approval when it comes to social distancing, things that we're putting in place to keep people safe. So that's something that's important to us. And so because of that, because we will involve a third party, those details aren't all settled yet. I think if we were to schedule or plan something now when we're in a period where there's social distancing, then we probably wouldn't like some of the answers that we're getting. So by putting off the date until later in the summer, we're hoping that things will look better and we're going to get support by third parties. But we are looking at models that have already happened, like the Air Force Academy's graduation. It was a good model. And so so that is what we're talking about. It's looking like July is a good spot.
Student checkout, another big thing that people want to know, stuff in gym lockers, personal belongings, that they didn't get that Friday following the first, I guess, delay. It's set for May 11th for seniors, May 20th through 22nd for the rest of school. What's that going to look like because of social distancing guidelines? And Arapahoe County's stay-at-home order was extended to May 8th. So May 11th hypothetically would work, but those stay-at-home guidelines are then going to turn to something like the governor's Safer at Home program. So what social distancing measures are going to take place for student checkout and turning in books and all that?
Yeah, great question. So the communication is supposed to go home either tonight or tomorrow morning. We have it set. We're just checking it over to make sure everything looks right. All the details are there. But essentially, originally we were going to do senior checkout on May 8th, but we had to move that because of the extension of the stay-at-home orders in Arapahoe County. And so that's why we landed on May 11th. So I think what that does is it just illustrates how anything that we're planning does potentially it could be impacted and moved or completely canceled. And so, going back to the previous question around graduation, once we have a plan in place, we're also aware that it could be impacted by decisions that are made by Tri-County Health or the governor, or even higher than that, perhaps at the federal level. And so, so going to our checkout, you shared the dates, and those are correct. I do want to say one thing: make sure that people are looking at the underclassmen dates because they aren't sequential. The dates are sequential, but in terms of the grades, they're not sequential. And the reason why is because we're planning around AP exams. There are some bigger AP exams for juniors that we planned around. There's also a bigger AP exam for sophomores that we planned around. So if people look at those dates and look at the order that we're going in, they might think that there's an error. There's not. We are going out of order with our 9th, 10th, and 11th graders deliberately. So what it's going to look like is we have security is in next week, and they are preparing all of the lockers by emptying them and bagging them. So we know whose lockers are whose, and we are taking the contents out, putting it in bags, labeling it with the student's name and also their grade level. Then it'll be taken to a staging area where it will be placed by grade level in alphabetical order. And so we're also doing the same thing with, this is actually happening this week, where we're preparing the CUME files for the senior class, because they have some things like the CUME file that they will be picking up that underclassmen will not. And so we're preparing all those, making sure that they are ready for our seniors to take with them in their bags. And then next week, we'll also have the PE teachers will go into the PE locker rooms to empty the contents of those lockers. And same thing, they will put them in bags that will have the name of the student on it, as well as their grade level. And then those will all be put in the staging area. And so then when we get to actual checkout, the seniors will go first. And when you get the communication, you'll see that we have 5 different zones on the campus. And it's based on your last name is where you will enter. So we're doing that to keep people spread out. So we have 2 entry points to zones on the north side of the campus where students would use Union to come into their zone. And then we have 2 that are along Dayton. So same thing, based on last name, you would go to your zone and you would be outside. And then we have 1 that comes in off of Yosemite. So the 5 zones are all outside, and the students will come to their zone based on their last name, and that will be a drop-off point where they will bring back school property so that they don't have fines. And then if they have things to pick up, which our seniors definitely will, then they'll go to zone 6. Zone 6 is going to be in the south parking lot, and students will actually enter off of Dayton, and they'll use the long campus drive that normally is reserved for buses. And then they will come into the south parking lot where they will pick up items, things like the contents of their lockers, but then also seniors will also get yearbooks, their CUME files, and other things that are more grade specific. The underclassmen, they may not need to pick things up. It will just depend if they have anything on campus or not. So depending on what grade you're in, you may not have to go to zone 6, which is the pickup zone. You may only go to your assigned zone and then go home. So It'll all be done outside. Students will come into their zone to drop things off, and they will get out of the car and put the items in the appropriate bin. And then the adults who will be working will be taking the bins to the appropriate department so that we can get the district property or school property back to the right department. Students will be required to wear masks just as the adults, the staff who are working are. So when they come on campus, they need to be wearing a mask. All of this information is in the communication that will go home. But essentially, checkout will happen outside. And we have, to make sure that we don't have long lines, we have 5 different zones, and we have time allotments. And so being that your last name starts with a P, you would be assigned to a specific window to come on your grade day.
Very good. That's all very complex. I'm sure a lot of thought goes into that.
Yeah, it did.
So we're going to go to self-scheduling, which has been, I think, the most talked about topic amongst people on social media and friend groups and whatnot. The first thing I really want to clarify is something that said in your original communication, which is here, that it takes you usually 6 weeks on campus to complete self-scheduling. And then in a statement issued by the class of 2022 on Instagram, that one grade usually takes 4 days on campus, so they would take 8 off of campus. So if each grade was taking 8 days remotely, that's less than 4 weeks. And you said it takes 6 weeks on campus. So can we just get a clarification on the timeline of where self-scheduling usually happens on campus, and then how it's happening for seniors off campus?
Yeah, good idea. So what students see is they see the days that they actually go in, but leading up to the actual day, your appointment, there's a lot of work that happens in the background where obviously coordinators are finalizing the master schedule. We're finalizing our hiring. And so once the master schedule is set, then we can publish it for our students. They need to have access to the schedule so that they can start the self-scheduling process. And so we have to have the master schedule done. Generally, we like it to be done 2 weeks in advance so students have access to that before they actually schedule. And so this year, the master schedule wasn't done until we got into April. And normally it would be done immediately after spring break. And so because our priorities shifted, we put the master schedule on the back burner for a little while. And instead of coming back from spring break and having it finalized, it wasn't done until April. So then when you actually do self-scheduling on campus, you'll probably recall that when you go in, there's a lot of adults who work in there. And so we are able to monitor the schedules, and basically before students leave, we're able to quickly check them to make sure that students have 4 core, for example, which is a board policy. We need to make sure that they have a full-time schedule, and we need to make sure that they have things like a lunch. And so, so when you're done building your schedule on previous years, there's adults who are around, and before you are done, they're looking over your shoulder, and what they're looking for are things like that. So in this environment, we're not able to obviously do that. And so we are doing it, but we're doing it from a distance. And so it takes more time because not everybody has the Power School access that that is required to do that. And so when we do it on campus, they're in the room and it works out.
We lost him. We're gonna come right back. Interesting developments. We're gonna take a break. We'll be right back on the CCSN special report. Welcome back to the CCSN special report. Some technical difficulties. It happens. We're all remote. We're getting used to some things. Our first time doing this remotely, but Principal Silva is back. We're talking about the schedule of self-scheduling, what the calendar usually looks like at school versus remotely. Principal Silva, I'll give it right back to you.
No problem. Sorry about that. So just going back to what self-scheduling actually looks like when we're on campus and you're in the registrar's office. There's a lot of adults there, and we also have a registrar, and she's behind the scenes. And what she's doing is she is releasing seats in each of the classes. So if you are a student who has an appointment at the start of self-scheduling, you don't necessarily have an advantage over the students who are at the end. And the reason why is, let's say that we take a teacher like Mrs. Gilbert. So her period 4 AP Lang class has 26 seats in it. Not all 26 seats are open on that very first day. So in other words, the first 26 students get access to that class and then it's gone. Each day, the registrar is releasing seats in there throughout the day so that all students have access, and maybe the classes that are most popular don't fill up right away. And then we have just what's left at the end of the week. So the point is that there are a lot of checks and balances that happen in the registrar's office, and we usually have a team of people who do that. Well, now in this remote environment, we can't have that team of people anymore because they don't all have the same access. So now it's come down to 3 people. So only 3 people are able to run all of this, whereas before we have a lot. And so that changed our timelines quite a bit. And so after the first day with the seniors, we had 18 issues that we had to hand fix. And the reason why we have to do those right away, and the reason why they're time sensitive, if we just let them sit and we wait until everything is over, then classes start to fill, and we end up having potentially classes that are overloaded. And so we have to do those in a timely manner. So the administrator and the assistant principal, and also the registrar, on each of these days that the seniors have been going, they've had to stay up until roughly about 10 o'clock at night, just working on the repairs that have to happen. It's not that the seniors aren't doing a good job, they are. It's just that we're used to having the checks and balances in the room, and now those are having to happen from our homes. And so that's causing issues. And so then at the end, the counselors are going to have to check all of these schedules against what the credits that are required are and what the seniors, for example, need to graduate. And so that's going to take a little bit more time than what normally would happen if we're on campus. And so they have to make sure that the seniors have a full schedule before they go into their senior year with all of the appropriate classes that they need for graduation before the juniors are built, because the juniors and the seniors sometimes share classes. And so if the juniors start scheduling, then they could take away seats in classes that the seniors might need. And so the point is that it's taking a lot of time because we don't have the same type of manpower. We also had some technical issues with self-scheduling, and we have fewer people who are supporting the technology that's required for self-scheduling. The district early on did say, if you guys want to do self-scheduling, we will support you, but the amount of support that you get from us is not going to exist now. And the reason why is they need to support remote learning for 56,000 students, not just the self-scheduling process for 2,700 students, and then deliberately cutting our population down because the incoming freshmen don't build their schedules. And so it's taking the fewer people that we have, it's taking them a lot of time to do it. And for example, on the first day too, we also had some students who hacked in at the time that they were not supposed to be in. And so we had to deal with those issues. So the point is that it's taking just a lot more time than what it normally does, but I'm still glad that we're doing it. But the ability to do it for multiple grades just really didn't exist. So this wasn't a matter of not wanting to, this was a matter of not being able to do
more than one grade. And really, you could probably make a pretty strong argument that we really shouldn't be doing it for the seniors, because the amount of time and manpower that it's taking, and that's taking those people away from doing other types of projects that have to be done. And so, but we believe in it because we do think it is important for our students to experience before they go to college.
So we came in contact with Allen. Have you heard of Allen High School in Texas?
I don't think I have.
So for the sports fan out there, you've probably seen Allen High School on Max Preps. They're the one with the $60 million football stadium. They have just over 5,000 students, and they do self-scheduling usually for sophomores, juniors, and seniors, just like Cherry Creek does. Was that ever a thought to look at maybe other schools' models and try to see what other schools did? Because I know that like the program that Cherry Creek uses, it's through My Cherry Creek. It's like its own app when you go to the suite, but obviously changing that at this point would be very, very difficult. But was there ever a thought to look at other schools' models of self-scheduling?
No, because I wasn't aware of any other high school that did this. And so we were under the impression that we were the only school that allowed the students to self-schedule. So I'm part of a large, high-performing public school cohort. And so I go to different schools, and they come to ours. And so in my travels, I haven't seen another school that does this. And so I wasn't familiar with Allen, Texas, and the fact that they do this. So no, I did not know that. Up until this point, the schools that I've interacted with, they do the scheduling much like all the other schools in our state do, which is really what we do for our incoming freshmen. So I didn't know that.
So yeah, there's plenty of schools that do it, but obviously it's difficult to pull off. Allen was the only school that had a similar amount of Creek to kids, but or same kids as Creek. I mean, it was a lot higher, but schools usually do on a smaller level, which is obviously it's smaller schools. You probably don't hear about them as much. We ran a poll on our Instagram page where 76% of students said the cancellation of self-scheduling for sophomores and juniors increased their anxiety. You guys, a great comeback for that was, you want to be able to accommodate preferences for off hours and stuff like that. So what's that going to look like to try to ease anxiety for students?
So we, going to the incoming sophomores, they've never done scheduling. And so the idea of them doing the self-scheduling from home without any support, that made us worry from the very beginning. But so we really were looking at the incoming juniors and the incoming seniors. And then when we just did the, is my internet access okay there?
Yeah, it's doing okay.
Ben, is the internet access okay?
Yes. If you can hear me, it is.
Okay, very good. So when we looked at those two grades and just the timelines, we knew that it was only going to be possible with one group. Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
There?
Yeah.
Okay, very good. Good. Okay, and you can hear me?
Yes.
All right, good. So we looked at the timelines. We knew that it was only one class. But so then going to your question about schedule changes, we do offer schedule changes, as you know, and so we will continue to do that. And so the piece with schedule changes is that students, when you've gone to those, you know that you're not guaranteed to be able to change the things you want to change, but we always want to provide the opportunity in the hope that you can address issues. And so we will make that available to our students again, and hope that they're able to address issues that may come up with the self-scheduling not existing for incoming juniors and sophomores. And so it is something that we also plan to talk about when's the best dates to actually put the arena schedule changes. Normally we do it after school starts, and so we don't know if it makes sense to do 2 rounds, but it is something that has been on our admin agenda to talk about if there are any adjustments that we need to make to schedule changes.
So the way in what we received, the way that it sounded like was that preferences were somehow going to be accommodate ahead of times? Like there's some type of communicate, like, oh, say I want 8th period off. So nothing's going to be able to happen ahead of time with preferences like that.
No, nothing like that as of right now.
Very good. We had a statement from a student that I wanted to read if I can find it. Yeah, so this came from a senior. So they'll be graduating. So I know I'm graduating, but self-scheduling is probably more important for the current sophomores because they will be getting letters of rec junior year and should be able to figure out what teachers they do and do not want to write them. Additionally, classes like speech and debate are labeled advanced debate, but each period is actually a different class. With robots building the schedule for students, I don't know how they would organize it. And I know something with the adventure program as well. There's a lot of classes labeled the same thing, but what goes on in the class is different. So how would you respond to that student?
Yeah, so it's just like there probably aren't as many examples in the freshman year, but we can program the computer system to do certain things. So in other words, like we have to tell the computer system that every incoming freshman has to have either 4th or 6th off for lunch. And so there are other parameters that we can also give the program. So if there are singletons, like basically that's what you're describing. So even though advanced debate is offered multiple times, really it's the same course title, but it's not the same course. And so we have to treat that as a singleton course, if you will. So the computer doesn't see it as 3 different options. It's seeing it as 3 separate options. And then for a student who is taking the period 3 edition of advanced debate, then the computer system is programmed to know that that student, based on the courses that they pre-reg for, has to be in period 3. And so then the same thing would happen with adventure. Even though there are multiple periods where they have adventure leaders, leaders are placed in specific periods. And so we would have to, we use different course sections for each one of those. And so for you, if you had pre-registered for advanced debate and you had to be in period 3, then we would give you that specific course number. That's the period 3 course number, not the period 7 or 8, for example. And by the way, I don't know if those are the right periods, but I'm just throwing those periods out as examples.
Last thing that people want to know about self-scheduling is when the automated, I guess, schedules will come out. I know the freshmen usually come out right before they go to orientation, which I assume orientation's up in the air. And then the sophomore and junior schedules, when are those going to come out? And are the juniors going to come out before the sophomores? Is there like a level, I guess, of seniority, anything like that, and when those schedules will come out?
So usually the way that schedules come out is like for the freshmen, they get them at check-in is actually when they get them. And so it'd be the same thing is, at least that's what the plan is right now, that it would be that they'd get it at check-in. But that's where we can look at our sister schools because they do not use self-scheduling and the computer system does build their student schedules. And so I don't know if they have a release system that is different than what we do for our incoming freshmen. And so that's something that we could learn from our the other Cherry Creek School District high schools to see if they release differently or if they also just do it at check-in.
Very good. We have some student questions that I want to get to as well. You've answered some of them without me even asking. The first one I really want to ask that I really liked, what's the hardest part of all this decision making that, the district has to make and that you and your administration makes?
Yeah, so probably, and this isn't unique to the environment that we're in right now, but I just know, and I'm sure that the district leaders also know that no matter what it is that you decide, you know that you're not going to satisfy everybody. And so you have to be comfortable doing that, knowing that if you're making a decision and you're doing it with the best interests of students in mind, then you have to just be comfortable knowing that there's going to be people who will be happy with the decision and also be people who aren't satisfied with the decision that's made. But if you know that your heart is in the right place and you're making decisions based on whatever parameters you have, but also what's best for the students, then I think you're comfortable with the people who are dissatisfied, knowing that you did everything to the best of your ability.
I mean, this next question is pretty much just a reiteration. How is arena scheduling going to work next year, since students will probably be unsatisfied with what they get? So if I could just have you reiterate that for that question.
So the schedule changes?
Yeah, so arena schedule changes.
Yeah, so right now, the plan is that it would work in a similar fashion as it's worked in the past. But there's a possibility that we could have more than one round of it. There's a possibility that we could also have it before the school year even opens. So in other words, like during check-in week. So those are some of the things that we talked about, but it would still be similar to what we've done in the past, in the sense that we can't put students in a class where there aren't available seats. And so just because a student might want to be in a specific period of AP Lang, it doesn't mean that we're going to overload the class.
Very good. This one, I mean, neither of us and no one, at the district besides the people on like the task force, but this mostly comes outside from people like Tri-County, but and we don't know what's going to happen with this virus, but is there a time where there'll be a decision made if how first semester will start next year? Because I know colleges which operate on such a larger scale, some of them have already decided that they're going to go remote for the first semester of the 2020-2021 school year. But for, a Colorado high school, the Cherry Creek School District, do you think that there's a target date or anything like that on when that decision might be made? Or so far are we planning on having it in person first semester?
Yeah, I think the whole situation is very fluid, but yes, as of right now, we are planning on starting the school year like we normally do. But I think we'd also be foolish to not think about what it could like if we had to open with social distancing, or we couldn't start the school year like we normally do. But as of right now, all indications are that we will start the school year like normal. But we will also follow the direction that's given to us by Tri-County Health and also the governor's office. And so those things obviously can change throughout the summer, but as of today, that is our plan.
We like to hear that. We hope that happens, of course.
Me too.
The next two questions come from football and Prom. So in Superintendent Siegfried's latest email, he said that school buildings would be closed until the end of June. So Prom and cheer usually have tryouts in April, which obviously didn't happen. And then football and golf and other sports do training during the summer. So if everything's closed, can we assume that those aren't going to happen in the building, or they'll happen in July? But are those allowed to happen outside the school buildings?
So right now, CHS said that nothing can happen until the start of June. And so we have to obviously follow what CHS says. So when you go to starting with the Palms and their tryouts being in April, so we wouldn't be able to do anything with Palms or cheers because they both try out in the spring for a fall sport. We wouldn't be able to do anything until CHSA would allow us to. But then our district has also closed our facilities through the end of June. And so, no, we would not be able to do anything official as a athletic program. Now, does that mean that athletes won't be trying to stay in shape? Absolutely, they will. But we can't do anything on an official basis as of right now in the Cherry Creek School District until after June. And if something were to change, then obviously we would communicate that. But so as of right now, our facilities are closed through the 30th, which does impact athletics.
Very good. I think that's all I have for you. If there's any other statements you'd like to make to the community, you are welcome to.
I would probably just say before I do leave that I know that this has been challenging for all of us, and there have been a lot of things that we've lost, like a traditional prom, like just being in school in the fourth quarter, which is a really fun time of year to be in at Cherry Creek. But then also things like the ability to self-schedule. And so I know that that's been difficult. And so my heart does go out to all the students. And I know just as a parent, seeing some of the loss has been really hard, where I have an incoming freshman, and she, the way that she ended her time at West will look very different than what I probably thought it would or it should have been. So I know that there's been a lot of loss, and I just want to say that my heart goes out to you guys, and I look forward to being back on campus and having some normalcy. And I know on behalf of all the faculty and staff, we really care about you guys and miss you guys too. So make sure you're taking care of yourselves, and we look forward to when we're all back together.
All right. Thank you so much for joining us. Thanks everyone for joining us on this CCSN special report. What it sounds like right now, we hope to see you in the fall. Until then, be safe and be well.
Thank you, Ben.
Thank you.